my friends. Welcome back to another Talent Talks podcast. I'm Scott Rivers, your host. Today we have, I think, an exciting guest. Today we have Jake Dunlap as our guest. You can find Jake pretty much anywhere that you're looking for business-related content today. He's on LinkedIn. He has, obviously, his own webpage, which is called Scaled. You can find that right here at scaled.com. That's SKALED. And with Jake today, we talk about a lot of things and we go into a lot of detail. What Jake is, I think, just tremendous at, besides growing a company and building up an organization, what he's really great at is helping to define a sales process and really push a sales process out to his clients, to people that he's talking to. I would consider him a sales hacker. And now that I'm reading that, I actually see that up there. I would consider him a sales hacker. He is able to go in and figure out what's wrong with the process, fix the process, and then move in from there and help organizations really quickly grow their sales. And so we talk about everything today from how Jake hires people, the number one thing that Jake identifies when he finds issues within an organization to go in and fix them. And so we kind of go into a lot of detail. And in fact, we also talk about some very specific products that Jake feels like are ideal for the sales process today, especially as we are looking at selling through a remote environment, which is what many of us, if not all of us, are doing. All right. So I really enjoyed the conversation. I think he's fantastic. You can also find Jake on what he calls Jake and Friends, which goes off at noon Eastern time on Mondays. You can sign up for that on his webpage. Go check him out on LinkedIn. Do me a favor. Go connect with him on LinkedIn. Let him know that you heard about him and learn more about him on the Talent Talks podcast. I would greatly appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. If you're seeing us on YouTube, if you're actually watching this today on YouTube, please go ahead and like that as well. We look forward to continuing to talk to leaders in the industries that we're serving, leaders who are helping our clients and you get better at remote sales and marketing. And as we flip, as we flip through this next transition and people are actually back stepping into the accounts like we want to as soon as possible, then we'll start moving in that direction. But as of today, we've got Jake Dunlap from Scaled. Please take a listen. Let me know your thoughts. Well, Jake, I really appreciate you coming on today. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think you're going to add tremendous value to the people who listen to this, especially given the time that we're coming out of right now with COVID-19 and all this going on. But first and foremost, I really want to just say thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Scott.
Good deal. Well, let's jump right into it. I'd love to be able to tell the audience a little bit more about you because you've got a career that's really impressive from a sales management standpoint. You've done some things that I think other people would have absolutely just fallen flat on their face with. And I think more people need to fall flat on their face more often.
I've fallen flat many times.
But let's kind of hear a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I'll try to give you a basic version. So I'm actually from the Midwest, grew up in Kansas City, went to college I love how you know the old name, Southwest Missouri State, now affectionately known as Missouri State. It was, by the way, when I went there, it had more undergrad students than Missouri, right? So it wasn't, people hear Southwest Missouri State, they immediately judge, especially when you get on the coast.
I thought it was a tiny little school. And
exactly.
I was only a few hours south of you in Arkansas, and I thought it was a tiny little school. Turns out it was larger than ours was. We had 14,000.
Yeah, no, definitely larger. Yeah. Missouri State was the party school. So did that, got a job and I started my career in sports. So I had a few sales jobs in college. I'd done telemarketing, which really, I had a lot of real world experience coming in. I was one of those people, and why it took me 5.5 years to graduate, that I couldn't have idle hands. Right. So I worked almost full time my last really 2.5 years of college. So I was working 35 plus hours a week and then go to school full time. And so that allowed me, when I got into kind of the real world, to excel relatively quickly. I already had a few years on people. And so started off in sales at the Tampa Bay Rays, moved to Tampa, or to St. Pete. Did that for a year and a half, moved to Phoenix, worked for the Coyotes. And then, you know, sports is an interesting world. You know, it sounds very glamorous. Oh, you work in sports, like working in entertainment, where it's like low pay, long hours, you know,
Right.
the horror stories you hear. So, you know, I had an incident with one of my boss where I told him to F off because I thought we were friendly, and I thought that I was immune because as a top salesperson that I could do whatever I want. That was not the case. And so, you know, he was not happy with that, let me go. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I am this top sales. I am crushing like, how can you fire me? And, you know, there's a lot of lessons I've learned throughout my career about people and dynamics. And that taught me about hierarchies and, you know, politics and things like that. And then got into tech. So started working at a company called Career Builder, which at the time was the largest job site. And I was working at Career Builder during the last, you know, blow up, right? So 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, my team was the number one team 2 years in a row. And then I went into the field and did enterprise sales. And I did that because it's really interesting. What I've started to hone in on this, Scott. What I realized is I always took jobs to learn, not to do the job. I took a job because I know I'm going to grow in that role to then let me accomplish something two layers up. Sure. Whereas I think too many people take jobs for money or to do the work. I just never looked at work that way. I was like, what am I learning today? How am I getting better today? And I think that attitude served me very, very well throughout my career early on. And because I had that mindset, I was always making moves to learn and to get better. It allowed me to, you know, then I left Career Builder to take over as the vice president of sales at Glassdoor, scaled that original sales organization. We went from 0 to $1 million in MRR in about a year. Sold to 24 of the Fortune 100 in the first year. And, you know, what I realized then I left, I didn't really kind of understand how in startup world you get layered. You know, there's like this big boss, they bring it over you every 2 to 3 years. I didn't quite get that. And I didn't know how to handle it really at age 30, 31. And went to New York, was a VP of sales there, and then just realized my calling, I love the work. I love building, scaling, fixing, optimizing sales and marketing organizations. But I didn't think I'm a very good employee. Like, I just realized, like, I'm really, when I would transition out of a role, whether it's my own or somebody else, it was like, I'm not bad. The work I'm you know, best in class at, but
Your
it's the politics.
Was always great.
The politics, I was worst. I'm worst in class at.
Okay.
So I never thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never thought I wanted to start my own company. It was more of just like life kind of told me, well, Jake, you can keep going through this race every 2 to 3 years or 4 years, you transition roles, or, you know, just go do it for companies that you want to do it for. And so that led me to start Scaled, which, you know, we're a sales and marketing, consulting, and strategy company. Really, you know, how we differentiate in the market. And I saw this because I worked with consultants, and why everyone hates consultants is they give you a 50-page document and say, good luck. And I wanted to fix that. And so we really partner both strategically and tactically to help companies actually solve challenges. And that's what excites me is actually seeing the results, seeing the outcomes, not just telling people, you know, what they're doing wrong.
So I like what you said, Jake, about taking jobs to learn, right? You don't take the job just to do it. You take it to learn. I was the stupid kid at 26 years old who got into an industry that was usually people that were much older. And my job was just to see how quickly I could move up to every single job. Half of them I didn't learn well, I won't say half of them. It wouldn't be enough. Yeah. Most of them I did not learn enough to actually make it to the next step. And by the time I got to be a global director of marketing, there was a lot of areas I was in over my head. I hadn't learned the things that I needed to learn. I've never said that in public. I hadn't learned the things that I needed to learn in order to take that and run with it. So I appreciate you saying that, you know, take jobs as a way to learn, and frankly, screw up as you're doing it, right? I mean, that's a good way to learn a lot of things. Try something and then go on to something else.
And the money will come. The money will come. You know, like I saw a lot of people. There's a very pivotal point in my career that I specifically remember, like, let's call it like age 25 through like 28, 30. It's in that range. Okay. Where I see there's a group of people that realize, well, if I go into leadership, I'm going to make less money than as a rep. It's like, dude, you're not thinking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15, where now my earning potential is 10x years.
Right.
You're right. For the next 2 years, you're going to make another 20, 30,000 more than me, but it's short-sighted. And I think a lot of people they're not thinking about their career. Whenever people ask me career advice, I always say, you got to think about the next steps, because how do you know the next role you want to take if you don't know the next role you want? You're just floating. And I always knew that, again, like I wanted to advance to this level of leadership, whether it was at Career Builder or I got an opportunity to be a VP of sales at a startup. So I knew where I wanted to go. Did I know the exact path? No, but I knew the skills that I would need when I got to that level, and I needed to work on getting those skills today. That's another mistake people make, is they don't realize that it's about, you've got to be able to do parts of the job in your current role today. You don't get promoted and then someone's like, figure it out.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and I think the other thing that you mentioned is right on the money. It's you're in charge of your destiny, right? You've got to know where you want to go with your career, and that's going to help guide you to all the different areas or positions you need to take in order to learn what you need to be successful. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I heard you the other day, you were talking about how you prepared for interviews and how you made sure you got all these jobs, whether it was the raise or anything else. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that a lot of people need to hear that today as they're starting to prepare for interviews. There's a lot of people in the market, some very good people in the market. How were you successful getting those jobs that you may or may not have been ready for?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I was lucky in retrospect. I had a professor at Missouri State who I was getting ready to go interview for the raise. He's like, Jake, you should bring a business plan with you. I'm like, one, what is a business plan? I mean, I graduated with a business degree. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, it makes sense. And so we talked through, and it's like, what is your plan to sell, right? And so I put together, I know I have the one from Tampa somewhere. I've seen it before. Like we've moved a bunch of times. So
right.
I have the one from Phoenix sitting right here, because I found it. But basically what I did is, before every job interview, and I prepared a job so they knew that I could do the job ahead of time. So when I went to Tampa, I said, look, I've analyzed the demographics in Tampa. I've looked at markets I think are interesting. And here's how I would sell baseball in Tampa, which at the time was one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball, with arguably the worst stadium in baseball. Mm-hmm. And I put together a business plan. So I walked in saying, look, here's my strategy. Here's the markets I'm going to attack. It was for a group sales role. Here's the groups I think that are most prevalent. I'd pulled out groups, right? And I said, here's my plan, right? You think any other kids did that? Nope. Then I went to Phoenix. Same thing, group interview, 35 people in a group interview, 35, right? What did I do? How am I going to sell hockey in the hot Arizona sun? That's the title of it, I'll tell you. How do you sell hockey in the Arizona sun, by Jake Dunlap, prospect for senior account executive, right? And I did it. I said, here's how I'm going to competitively position against the Suns. Here's how I'm going to competitively position against other folks, and how to get them interested and not think about the hockey, but think about spending time with their family or whatever it was. Then whenever I went to Career Builder, I was interviewing for a leadership job. What did I do? I brought a market plan. Here's the market today based on trends I'm seeing in the economy around these sectors in the Pacific Northwest. Here's the sectors I think we should start targeting in the next year. And I brought a business plan. I was there for 4 months. I got a job over the woman who had been there for 2.5 years and relocated to Phoenix to get that job. And so you got to put in the work. And I think too many people, whether they're looking for a job or they want to level up, they expect like, oh, you're going to get picked or chosen. No. The same thing if you want to get a job right now. If you're unemployed, you got to find the hiring manager, go show them, look, here's how I think I would sell your product. Here's how I think I would do it. I don't have all the answers, but here's some ideas. And that puts you in the top 1% of people just by doing that.
And it doesn't have to be 100% correct.
No, it's
just
like
putting
5.
forth the effort is huge.
That's it. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
It's like 5 pages.
And we say that all the time to people that are going into interviews that we're representing and working with. Put the effort in to this interview. Make it your job to figure out more about the company than other people will. Put together a plan. And all of the things that you mentioned, I think, are just right on the money. And so many people just don't. They won't put forth the effort. And that's how you can stand out very quickly.
That's it, Scott. And I think I was looking at it. There's literally whiteout on it. Like if anybody knows what whiteout is, okay, whiteout is this thing you used to have when you didn't reprint something. I probably had to go to Kinko's to print it or something like that, So.
Yeah, and you couldn't make it back to Kinko's. I remember those days all too well.
I just read it and I was mortified, so I did some whiteout.
And it was the liquid stuff, right? This is not the tape that we have today.
It's raised up for sure.
Cool, man. Well, let me ask you, as you are, and I want to get into a lot of the stuff that you're doing now, but
Sure, let's do
let
it.
me ask you, how do you today stay sharp? A lot of people have kind of fallen into a funk with everything going on. How do you stay sharp? What do you listen to? What do you read? What makes you continue to keep moving every day?
Yeah, and I think, look, I probably was with a lot of you, work, 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 and so like it's funny. These last few weeks, I went and got a physical, went to the dermatologist, started to kind of reset. I'm started intermittent fasting.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of us have kind of got in a rut, and so step one for me is sleep and taking care of your body. And if forget reading books or any of that, I mean, I'll get into some books that are top of mind for me right now, but
Sure.
that to me is something I've realized that when I sleep, as I continue to get older, is one of the most important variables. And again, because I grew up in the sales world, shit, dude, I was used to staying out till 2 a.m. getting up, because Career Builder used to do that. They'd be like, okay, the meeting started at 7:30 a.m. And then like the AVPs would see how long they could keep you up almost. Right. And so I developed the tolerance that, I turned 40 a few weeks ago. And so now my life and body's a little different. So I think take care of your body, take care of your health first. Book wise, there's a few different books I'm reading right now. I usually am reading two books at once. One that is more either fiction or we'll call it creative stimulating, and one that's more of a business book. So right now I'm reading amazing book called Four Disciplines of Excellence by Stephen Covey.
Okay.
And it just talks about how to run a very high performance organization. As my organization grows and scales, I've got to make sure that we do have a metrics and a performance-based culture, across the organization, and that's a good thing. It doesn't have to be negative, et cetera. And then I'm reading on the flip side a book called Behave, which is a book by a Stanford neurobiologist. And it's about all of these unconscious biases that we have. It's about how the brain actually works and the chemicals and how much the chemicals in our brain actually impact what we do versus how much we think that they do. So I've always been interested in psychology and why
Right.
people do what they do. And it's why I think I've been good at sales as well too, because I have a foundational understanding of that. And so those are the two big ones that are top of mind for me. And again, for me, it's about sharpening the spear on making sure each part of my organization is sharp and we're staying sharp. And then it's about, for me, just more of continuing to grow and learn and, grow as a leader and a CEO.
Yeah. And we'll dig into some of that leadership, because I think it's important. I mentioned in something that I put out a few days ago that I think right now more than ever, we need leaders. We need people who can stand up, motivate a team, whether it's sales or anything else, motivate them, get them back to their sharpest point that they can be at, and then push them forward. So many people are just kind of sitting there in idle, and we need people moving forward right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a leadership issue. Man, what really prompted me to reach out to you is how active you are on LinkedIn. I mean, I was on a live with you this morning. I've seen a couple earlier. I've seen a couple from earlier this week. I mean, I
Yeah,
jump
that's
on.
right.
You're going live all the time. You are putting out tremendous amounts of content, and it's working. I mean, it drew me to you. I'm sure that it's drawing a lot of other people to you, but why LinkedIn? And what is this that you're doing? Putting out all of this information, you're
Mm-hmm.
giving it away for free. Tell me why.
Yeah, I mean, look, we had an epiphany it was about 2 years ago. It was May of 2018, so a little bit longer. Look, we were doing what every consulting firm does. We're producing blog posts weekly, ebooks, every 60 to 90 days. I mean, Scott, these things were beautiful, amazing content, and they took so much effort. Oh my God. And we put them out on social media and we get 40, 80, whatever, 100 downloads or something, which, by the way, an ebook download is not intent, so let's just clear that up. And I was like, God, we put all this effort into it, why isn't this working? And I think I just had a realization. I'm like, oh, people aren't trying to read that anymore. They're
Yeah.
like, I need to give me the cliff notes, man. And I looked at content that was performing on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, it's all short form text.
Right.
I was like, so for a year between 2018 and 2019, I shut it all down. We did 0 blog posts, 0 ebooks, and focused solely on producing short form content on LinkedIn. And the reason is that's where my buyers are. I work with CEOs, sales leaders, marketing leaders, and they're active on LinkedIn on a semi-regular basis, even more now. LinkedIn, I think with COVID, is like the 16th most visited site in the US. It's
Wow.
where professional people get their news. And the analogy I give is, look, if you're an executive, because of COVID, you can't go speak anywhere, right? Or even, it doesn't have to be an executive, you can be a sales rep. If I went to you sales rep, I said, look, you've got a group of people, and let's say these are your buyers because you've been connecting with prospects and types of people, and there's a networking event, and every day I can give you a 5-minute speaking spot. Would you take it?
Of course.
Of
100%.
course. Then why aren't you posting every day on LinkedIn?
Right.
You've curated a network of people you've connected with that are your prospects. By posting on LinkedIn, I'm giving you a chance to speak to them. Take the opportunity. And I think we are generating millions of dollars a year from LinkedIn, organic. We had a deal last year. I'll never forget this one. 6-figure deal. Our initial, we had a 6-figure deal this year too. I don't even know what you do, but I'm into it. And it helps out tremendously mid funnel too. It's not all top of funnel. It's like, okay, I want to see if these guys are legit. We lost a client because of it too. This one client the CEO didn't like that I said that you shouldn't thank people for their time to start a meeting. I still don't think you should. I'm like, okay, fine. It's not a fit. Great. I'm sure we've lost other deals because of it too. Right. But it's certainly generated probably a lot more business than it has, lost business for us.
Yeah. And don't you think that whether you like it or not, I mean, marketing is getting people to know, like, and trust you. And if they don't like you, then they're not a fit for you, and vice versa. It happens. It does happen. But if you're putting enough content out there, you're attracting the right people that are going to know, like, and trust you and want to move forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So how could this work let's think about it. I mean, all of the people that we're working with on a regular basis, they're selling into life sciences, hospitals. Yeah. That face-to-face time right now it's zero. It has been zero for 3 months. I'm going to estimate it's going to be zero for the next 6 months. So how can individual salespeople and or companies take your advice and be able to start to get the attention of people on LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's a few things. It goes back to what I just said. So you should be connecting with 50 to 80 people a day. If you have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which I suggest you all get, you can literally connect with, tens of people every day. So why wouldn't you add every single prospect in your market?
Right.
Why wouldn't you? And then you can produce 1 or 2 pieces of content a week to start. That's thought leadership. Hey, here's what's happening in this market. Don't just talk about your company, blah, blah. Nobody cares. Right. Talk about what's happening in the market. That's one. So you build your own little territory nurturing with this. You connect with these people, you put out a post. It's about thought leadership. They know who you work for, etc. The next is, again, with Sales Navigator, I can go and there's a little filter in my homepage that says lead shares. So those are my people when they share a piece of content. What can I do? I can go interact with those people. And that's the play. That's the play for a lot of our companies. Most of our companies, the modern play for outbound or relationship building is digital. And guess what? When we come back from COVID and you can go face-to-face, again, with LinkedIn, I can still beat you because I can interact with 18 people and you're visiting 1.
Yeah.
And so by the way, I think as we go back, it's about both. It's not about or. But I think right now is the time to master this, because being able to do this digitally, and again, keep in mind, what this is also doing is training an older generation of people who used to only want to meet face-to-face. They all know how to use Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever now.
They do.
And so
everyone's using it.
That's right. And so this person who used to be like, oh, technology, oh, Johnny wants to meet someone face-to-face. We are training people to become more digital savvy and candidly, probably skipping ahead 5 to 10 years on these markets. I have a big feeling that, and I already know it because some of our clients and other clients are talking to us about it, that, are we going to continue to build these field sales, big orgs? Maybe.
I heard you talk about internal sales, inside sales becoming more important.
It already was. We were already trending that way, Scott. We were already trending that way. And what COVID has done is now we're getting people closing 6-figure deals with never meeting somebody. They're closing mid to early, 5-figure deals. Now they're closing 6-figure deals. And you think that now is like, oh, well, now that you're adding less value? No. And yeah, don't get me wrong. I think you should do face-to-face too, once that's like a thing again. But I do think that people are used to it. and you can build value like this the same way you can face to face.
Yeah. And I think one thing you mentioned really important is you're not just flooding content out there about your company. You're not selling. You're not always trying to sell. It's creating value.
That's
It's
it.
putting information out there
Yes.
about the industry or what you know about a business that's going to get people to actually listen to it. I can't tell you the number of people that all they do is put out sales content, sales information about their products, and I unfollow it.
And no,
Right?
that's why you get no interactions. If you want to know why you consistently, or your companies are the worst. Like if you want to know why your company consistently gets 0 comments, or the only comments are from your employees, it's because you're selling and you're not giving value. And, for me, it's we do like almost a 9-to-1 ratio. Maybe it's probably higher. My team wishes I would sell more. Like if you follow me on LinkedIn, you click, and Scale gets the benefit because it's my company, right? But the amount of time I actively talk about you should use sales consulting or performance optimization for your sales team, is slim to none.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to tell you, people are behind right now. I think they're 3 months behind if they haven't been doing that. 4 months behind, maybe. It took me a long time to put this podcast together, and it wasn't until COVID-19 that I'm like, you know what, it's got to happen. We've got to get more people out there, and this is my content, right? I'm talking to you, Jake, and I'm hoping that ultimately people say, hey, this guy is connected. He's trying to help us. Let's go back and talk to him. We'll see if that works. But that's kind of the plan. My goal right now is to give free stuff away. That's what we're doing. How about the leadership, medical sales leadership, company leadership? What can they be doing? Because, I think that a lot of times individual contributors aren't comfortable just throwing themselves out there.
Sure.
So what can these leaders be doing to either provide them with a higher level of comfort or give them things that they can put out?
Yeah. I mean, I'll talk about LinkedIn, and then I'll talk more broad what I think, whether it's medical device or life science, anyone selling to labs or hospitals. So on the LinkedIn piece, it's, you need to be a beacon or a guiding light for this, meaning you need to show your team that it's important. We're working at the company. It's like in the chemical installation business for like energy plants, and this it's by far not the most sexy of products, but their leadership team is bought in, and they realize like, hey, our buyers our buyers' bosses maybe are on LinkedIn. Hospital admins are on LinkedIn. Lab admins are on LinkedIn. Like the senior level people, they're there. So I think as a leader, it's your job to start to think about, I'll give you a good example. LinkedIn as a company posted about 33 times last month. Over 6,500 LinkedIn employees posted last month, and some posted multiple times. So let's say they each posted twice. So that's 32 posts compared to 13,000 posts. So if you can enable that machine, there's no comparison. So I think you've got to be smart and think about how you can enable your team to be more successful and lead by example. On the sales front, right? I think this is where I see a lot, because a lot of field leaders are either used to being near their team all the time, or have been just in sell mode. Like the go-to play they have is golf at Whistling Straits and dinner at Carmine's and whatever it is, right? Like the go-to play is some, and obviously in medical device it's more regulated, but there's a version of that stuff. And now you've got to rely on ROI and value. And so to me, I think more than ever is I would be working with my team on true, we'll call it solution selling. And, we have a methodology called the customer framework, which is really just how you engineer your process to be toward the customer. And where it's really at the heart of that is this idea that you need to be talking in your customer's language. Okay, so at this hospital, these are your top priorities. Fantastic. Here's the impact that this is going to have. Not here's another purchase order for XYZ. You can use this time to level up. Hey, in every account, a tier 1 account, our goal this month is to get 3 points of contact. You want to know the number one reason for churn? It's usually top 3 reason for churn at companies. Your main point of contact left. Use this time to get more contacts. Use this time to get more multi-threaded. right? So I think those are the two things. Get more multi-threaded, use this time to make more relationships. People have a little bit more free time. Hospitals maybe a little bit less depending on the department. And then also, are you working to level up your reps to where you're building their business acumen and not their relationship building acumen? And I feel like a lot of people in the life sciences, genetics, biotech, medical device over rely on these relationship skills versus business value skills.
Having a plan is important, and keeping sharp and continuing to get better is super important as well. I think a lot of people are still focused on relationships, like you said, and there are skills that can be sharpened in sales to make you better. It's not always about the relationship, right?
Yeah, it's not ever. Sometimes it is. Like for me, look, I don't need another friend in Phoenix. I got plenty. I don't need another friend in Salt Lake City. I'm here to impact your life. I'm not here to be your best friend. And I think too often we over rely on charm, and that way of selling is just dying. It's dying. Is it important? Yes. But as markets become noisier, as people get stretched, they need you to cut to the chase. They might not have time to be your friend. They might not have time to build a relationship. They're dealing with 800 other things, especially at the executive level. So I think more and more people need to stop relying on a relationship to get the deal over the top versus, do you really know how you can impact their life? Do you actually know what that admin does? Do you know what that purchasing person does? Do you know what at that hospital system versus this hospital system? And I feel like too often we make generalities. We're too focused on sending cookies to the front desk, and we're not focused enough on talking to people about outcomes.
Yep. One of the things we used to do, and I think some people still do it. I think if they're not, they ought to be when they can. We used to spend a day in a lab. We'd called it a day in the life. Can I spend a day in the life? I want to come in at the end of third shift. I want to work all the way through first shift and see what second shift is doing. And we would follow exactly what was going on, figure out everything in that lab. And when we walked out, and we took notes, and I had people who were laboratory experts with me, but when we walked out and we started working on a proposal, even though we weren't ready for a proposal, I would do this before anything was even going on, just to get to know the lab, get to know their process, get to know their workflow. When it was time for proposal, I could tell them more about their lab than a lot of times they knew, because they're focused on one area, and I would be able to look at it from a much bigger picture.
And what I would do is I would bring my teams. I remember I was friends with the VP of operations at McKesson when I was in Phoenix, and he was in my MBA program. And the team I ran, we had some manufacturing clients and some people in the medical device. And so I had him give us a tour of the facility. Yeah. And so my team, they're like, oh, this is what someone who, runs an operations organization looks like. And guess what? The quality of conversations they could now have with an operations executive. I mean, if you understand how McKesson and some of their distribution works, you're talking to a local operator in the Pacific Northwest or Southeast, come on. And it's about your buyer and their motivations, their life, what they're going through. And that's why that shadowing, I love that shadowing exercise. It's great.
Yep. Then the business. And then when you start talking about ways that you can help them, they're in.
That's
you
right.
got it. Yep. Jake, let's talk about Scaled. Tell me about Scaled. Tell me what you guys do and what you guys focus on, your client base, everything.
Yeah, so I gave it a little bit about it before. I mean, usually we have two types of clients. We have companies that are going through different phases of growth or scaling or trying to open up a new group. And usually with those organizations, we're coming in on really a project basis, or sometimes almost like an interim staff augmentation basis around operations or enablement, and helping them with usually demand generation. We're trying to generate new leads or more leads in a market or in a new market. Around the sales process, Jake, we need to overhaul our sales methodology. Right? We need, we've been using Sandler or, the pain, whatever it is. And we need to up level our sales process and methodology. And then the third is usually around account growth or infrastructure. How do we better develop a proactive growth mindset with our customers versus a reactive service plus a little bit of growth mindset. And so we're usually coming in and partnering with organizations to ensure that they have what they need and embedding with their team to implement that change and make sure that it sticks. Because that's what people don't realize about any change management. There's so much hype about the intake and the building of the materials and the deployment. and the trainings, that's step zero. It's the reinforcement is on the change management. That's all that matters. Like, I can't tell you how many big companies we've came in on the back of a failed launch. Well, we tried to do this big, huge thing and it didn't work. Well, there's no reinforcement. There wasn't buy-in at the right levels. And so change management within the sales org is very difficult. And so, we have clients in a wide variety of sectors, big tech companies, one of the largest nuclear power company in the US. And because, with the way that we operate, we are reverse engineering from an ideal customer experience. Who are your top customers? How do they interact with you? How did they interact with you? And now how do we engineer a sales process? Because a lot of these processes are very similar, whether it is Sandler or solution selling or challenger or medic or value selling. Guys, it's just different words for listen to your customer and put together a solution based on pain points and not your products. And so for us, what we found is it's actually about creating the best customer experience. And if I can optimize ways to move customers through different stages faster and with a better experience, it leads to faster and bigger deals. And so, that's a lot of the work that we're doing now with larger companies, is helping them to kind of re-engineer and update their process to something that's a little bit more modern and meeting customers where they are today.
So what do you find to be, and I know you talk about the follow-up and everything else, but what do you find to be the biggest issue with sales groups today? I mean, what's like the one thing when you walk in, you're going to say, okay, that, as always, is screwed up. Let's get it fixed. First things first, let's get that fixed.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll say this one, if you have this problem, which is a good problem, I would call it inbound lead management, that companies are epically bad at how they follow up and engage with inbound leads. And there's usually literally within 2 weeks, we can have a 10, 20, depending on how bad it is, an immediate impact on inbound lead triage. There's some SLAs like follow up in 24 hours. It's like, ugh. No, it's follow up in 15 minutes. The data is there that if we can just fix the follow-up time, if we just get these people to call them, in 30 minutes instead, or 15 is ideal, versus 4 hours, there's 15% more leads right there. So inbound to me is one of the easiest ones. The other piece I would say is technology. That many times the tech stack that they've built, they've hired Salesforce admins. They've hired, they've implemented all this tech. The sales team hates it or isn't using it. Right. And so tech isn't augmenting what they're doing, it's hindering what they're doing. And there's over 1,200 sales technologies today. 1,200. So if you're just using your CRM and a notebook, man, it's really easy to outcompete you. And it's not about automating customer interactions. It's about automating all this dumb stuff behind the scenes. And if I can automate a customer interaction, how can I do that in a way that's personal or authentic? So I feel like tech is the other one where these sales operations teams are either too small or overworked, or they just haven't seen all these technologies to know what's possible. And then maybe if I added a third, it's modern lead generation. That these guys are still pounding the phone and emails. I'm sending cookies to that office the same way my boss did, and my boss's boss, and my boss's 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 boss did back in the day. And we're showing up and buying lunch for Susie and Ethel at the front, right? Guys, there are a lot more modern ways to engage that are a lot more clever. Whether it's, again, if it's at the admin level, how you utilize LinkedIn to engage with people, whether it's at the frontline level and how you think about the next new age gifting. There's gifting platforms now that can do things from a virtual and from a physical goods thing that are just so innovative, and personalized, that I think that if you're continuing to rely on the tactics that somebody was using 10 years ago, there's probably some areas of optimization there.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think that it's...
I like cookies, by the way. You know what I mean?
I'll send you cookies.
I'm okay with cookies. I'm okay with the lunches. I know. I'm not saying don't do that. To me, this is more of an and think about these other things, and think about LinkedIn, and think about how you can be even more personalized versus one size fits all in your outbound approach.
But Jake, don't you think that so many people have seen those canned responses and they're just scared to death that they're going to have the same stuff when they do automations, when they do all of these sales tools, they're going to get the same crap coming back at them that they just forget about?
Well, here's what I think is really important. I'm going to talk about Outreach, we're their largest implementation partner, because it's actually a really important concept. Don't think of these, they're not email automation tools. That's marketing automation. This is sales engagement, which means I could create a 12 touch sequence to reach out to you.
Right.
And touch one could be connect on LinkedIn. Touch two could be send a direct message and highlight some of these things. Step three could be send cookies. Step four could be comment on a post. Right. It is not email, automate. So it's more about, like, I don't know about you, but my memory, everyone thinks their memory is great, but it's not. I can't remember, what stage someone's at. Whereas now, imagine I walk in every morning, I've got 15 people I'm supposed to follow up with. Debbie's at stage 9. You're at stage 3. Johnny's at stage 2. And it's just outsourcing my memory. It's these are workflow management tools. They're not send all email tools. And I think that's the issue, that I think the perception that a lot of people have, it's predicated on how marketing works. And that's not how sales engagement tools work. Same thing with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, right? Like that, to me, I've written posts about this. Like, if you said, Jake, you got to pay $150 a month out of your pocket for outreach and $75 out of your month a pocket for sales nav, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would give up that $225 because I know it's going to make me like 4 times more efficient than every single one of my peers. And so again, it's about being effective too, right? With these tools, I'm not doing this like manual stuff. Oh, who should I follow? Oh yeah. Hank, I forgot to follow. No. Yeah. I'm outsourcing my brain.
Or jumping into Salesforce and going, where was I?
Or using tasks in Salesforce. Yeah. How many of you have 400 open tasks in Salesforce right now?
Of course. And right? So, and there's a lot of tools out there. There's some that are less expensive. I mean, there's things that you can use, are for sure. Right? Yeah. Octopus CRM or whatever. Yeah.
Reply.io, I know, is a low cost version of like Outreach, which is the kind of sequencing thing I talked about. There's plenty of tools that can do this for you. But the point is, like I said, if you're continuing to not use tech, there's a whole bunch of data around how much teams that use tech outperform teams that don't.
Right.
And so it's just, here's what I tell a lot of people. If you think, hey, I wonder if there's something that can do this, the answer is probably yes. Right?
Yes. Like at this point, the answer is probably yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. We've grown exponentially as it relates to tech, and the old school way. It's so funny. I was talking to a client yesterday, and I said, so what's the plan? What are we doing? He was like, more at bats, man, more at bats, more calls. There's other ways to do this, especially now.
That's the mindset, dude. That's the mindset, Scott. Ways. That's all we know in sales leadership. More. And the answer is like, it's the balance. I'm a part of this from a buddy, Richard Harris. He's the first one. This idea of efficiency, or it's effectiveness over efficiency. It's about being effective. It's about outcomes, not about just the how many times I did calls. And then and then as leaders, and let me just ask you this: if you're a leader listening to this, did you ever make fake dials when you were a rep? Did you ever hit send all to hit a minimum? Or, I mean, you probably didn't have the ability to. You're creating perverse incentives.
Right.
Like you're just repeating the sins of your father. Like, guys, there's smarter ways to do this. Don't just keep doing it because, it's what just think about how you can be smarter and not just hit the more button.
Yeah. Great points. Jake, let's talk about what you have coming up. Offerings. What do you have coming up that the people need to know about?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things we're doing that I think is really new and interesting to the market. And the first is this idea of augmented sales help. You see this in marketing, you see this in finance, where you get these experts that you can embed as a part of your sales operations team or enablement team. In marketing, look, you've got PR agencies, you've got website agencies, digital agencies, performance marketing agencies. On the finance side, you bring in an audit expert, you bring in a part-time CFO, you do all these things. We're bringing that to sales. So we're bringing, interim sales operations support, interim sales enablement support, and interim sales leadership, and really packaging this up. And we've been doing this already in crazy success, and then build out infrastructure or build out this new team and then backfill. And what I'm really excited is to start to bring this to enterprise to say, hey, you're a big company. You have 40 leaders. At any time you have 5 open positions. Well, what happens to those leaders? Well, now you overstretch this other leader over here. Or the director has to come in and do it. Well, why not have a pod of 2 or 3 people on our team that can go fill holes and coach and guide? So this idea of staff augmentation and experts in the sales org is something I'm really excited about that we're doing. And I think it's really revolutionary. Nobody's really doing this at scale. No pun intended, maybe pun intended.
Maybe pun intended.
And the other piece is LinkedIn, that really we are doing a lot of work right now helping to modernize organizations' usage of LinkedIn, both at the marketing, executive, and frontline sales level, and how to not social sell and send better DMs, but how to actually do some of the things I talked about around how to authentically engage with people to then build a little bit of relationship capital to make getting the meeting easy. Cool. And so there's a lot of strategies that we've developed and plays that we've developed around LinkedIn that are why we've got a rep who just implemented this new version for one of our target clients. He set 6 meetings in 2 days and got 2 inbound calls. It's like, Jake, I've never got an inbound call in my life. And so LinkedIn is just such an untapped tool. And I know, especially in this group, it's like, well, Jake is our audience. It's like, if you're selling it to the administrative level, your audience is on LinkedIn, right? I promise you.
And I think more and more people are it's growing every day. I think more and more people are getting on it. There was a time where you couldn't find lab personnel.
That's exactly right.
Couldn't find certain areas. Right. They're coming on there, and it's going to continue to grow. I mean, do you worry, Jake? I mean, do you worry now that Microsoft owns it, that at some point they're going to tighten the screws and we're going to lose some of this data and access?
Well, the data already is shit, and you can edit that if you need to.
I'll leave it in if you're okay with it.
I'm good with it. I mean, the data you get out of LinkedIn, we've got a third-party app that we white label. So if you're interested in how to get personal page LinkedIn data, let me know.
I'm interested.
Yeah, I can hook you up with it. So no, I mean, LinkedIn, the thing about LinkedIn's always been a closed ecosystem. So it's a perfect acquisition for Microsoft. They've always had a relatively closed API. So I just hope it gets a little more liberal. I hope they allow you to do some things that are a little bit more social media, because what a lot of people don't realize at LinkedIn is LinkedIn sells a lot more jobs than they do sales licenses. And so you got to keep in mind, LinkedIn has 2 very different audiences. They've got talent people, and that's still their primary audience. And then they've got marketing, they've got sales, they've got learning. So LinkedIn right now, they've got to serve a lot of different folks here to be a huge multi-billion dollar company. So, I hope they start to continue to enhance some of the social features. Right now, you're limited to having 30,000 connections, which is kind of a pain. But other than that, it kind of is what it is,
Sure. Yeah, you've talked about Sales Navigator. I think that's an amazing deal. It's a no-brainer for that product. No-brainer. I mean, compared to what I pay for Recruiter, or a Recruiter license.
Oh yeah, LinkedIn, for sure.
Sales Navigator is a no-brainer.
It is.
Jake, let's end on this, right? We're a talent organization. We're focused on talent. You're growing your company and continuing to do that. What do you look for when you're hiring somebody, besides coming in with a business plan of how they're going to be successful? What do you look for? They don't. What do you look for when you're hiring people? Like, what's that one thing? What's that that you say, I'm hiring this person. I don't even know where I'm going to put them, right? It's the Michael Jordan thing, right? I'll put Michael Jordan at center if I can have Michael Jordan on the team. So what do you look for?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I am, over the years, I've become more methodical about the interview process, meaning I've realized that, whether it's assessments or different skills related, where you're using a point system based on skills. Mm-hmm. And so we've tried to really standardize our interview process, and there's a few key steps. And a lot of this we took from, there's a series of books. The first was called Top Grading. There's a guy named Jeff Smart who wrote a book called Who. And we've borrowed a lot of our best practices from that. I'll tell you, there's an interview process that we do at the end called the experience interview. And we ask the same questions for every job. And we'll go back deep. I'll go back 20 years in your experience. And I'll ask you, tell me what you were hired to do. What was the high point? What was the low point? When I talk to your boss, can you spell their name for me? How are they going to rate you on a scale of 1 to 10, and why? Why did you sometimes we'll ask them, how did you handle a difficult, tell me about a time that's difficult, and then why did you leave?
Sure.
And we do that for every job. What that does is it lets me see a pattern. It starts to let me see my boss probably a 7, probably a 6. I had trouble, a 7. Nope, no higher. This guy's right. The same way that people leave their other boss is the same way they're going to leave you. Yeah. Just let that sink in. Right. Yep. So for me, I think what I look for is have they had a purposeful career? Have they made intentional decisions? Right. And we all have bad bosses. We all have gaps. Don't worry. I don't care about that. I don't care about a gap here or there. I don't care about, one guy would give you a 5 or even 2 if you've had, 7 or 8 jobs. Sure. But I think you look for patterns in behavior. And for me, coachability is a big one. I really struggle with people who don't have a true growth mindset. And I'm a really bad boss for those people, like almost toxic boss for those people, because I have such a growth mindset that if you think you're coachable but you're not, you will get exposed at my company fast. Because you won't be able to take the heat. Yeah. And the heat comes back to me. This is so great. Listen to this. We've got a woman who just joined us first week. She sat in on a training I did yesterday. This is day 4. This morning, she slacks me. Jake, hey, I was like, hey, what do you think of the training? Hopefully it was helpful. I was doing it for one of our clients. She goes, Jake, yeah, something. She goes, would you be open to some feedback? I was like, absolutely. And like, just imagine, she's probably, I don't know how old she is, but she's mid-20s probably.
4 days in the job.
4 days in the job. I'm
awesome.
The CEO of the company. I'm like, exactly. That is what we look for at Scaled. So I look for demonstrated coachability. I look for demonstrated growth. I look for, because it's not about theoretical, it's about demonstrated. So that would be my advice. Don't ever ask interview questions about how would you, how did you? I want to know how you did handle things. And I want to know, as opposed to hypotheticals, and there's a lot of data around why this is a better way to interview too. But those are kind of my big things. I don't know if it's like, one thing I look for. It's kind of a series of, 1 + 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah, it makes sense. I look for cultural fit first, and then I look for the other things like what you're talking about. Past performance is probably the best predictor of future success.
That's exactly it.
So let's dig into that and figure out why this is a good fit. And if it's not, no problem. No problem at all.
That's right. And the other thing that we do that could be helpful is I tell you who I want as references. I don't give me references. I say, great, I wanted to go talk to Rachel Henderson, John Smith, and Rachel whatever, right?
Yeah. How many times have you been given a reference that was negative?
0.0. That's why I don't ask you. I go back through your last 3 bosses because I ask you what their names are, and I make you introduce me to them. Right. And then guess what? We have a script for the referral process too. Nice. The reference process. Same questions. Again, what we're trying to do, we've really tried to eliminate any type of biases, any type of groupthink, any type of issues around that would exclude, protected class. We have a regimented process. And because of that uniformity, whether I do the interview or John does the interview or Matt or Franklin or whoever, we all know what's happening, and it's a better candidate experience too, because there's nothing worse than when a candidate gets asked the same question 7 different times. Stop being lazy. It's just lazy.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I'll send you, I'm not going to ask you to sign up for it. I'm going to send you an ebook that I wrote probably 5 years ago. And it details out a lot of the things that you're talking about. I think you and I are right on the same page when it comes to hiring. And I reference the book Who that you're talking about.
Oh, so great. Yeah.
We're definitely on the same page.
I love that book. It's changed the way that I hire people for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jake, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time. I'm doing it at the end. Maybe I did it at the beginning too, but I appreciate the time. I think this has been great. I think it's been helpful. I hope that a lot of people reach out to you. Definitely everyone needs to go check out Jake on LinkedIn. He's active and giving out awesome content and information on a daily basis. You can sign up for his Jake and Friends, right? That's on Mondays.
That's right. That's on Mondays. That's right.
Sign up
Mondays
for Jake
at noon
and Friends.
Eastern.
Yeah. The content you're putting out is fantastic. People appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm glad you were here today.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Scott. Thank you for having me.
All right, man. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
Thank you again for joining us. You've just listened to another Talent Talks podcast. Today's guest, Jake Dunlap. Hopefully you learned a lot from this. Do me a favor, comment underneath this video. If you're watching on video, let me know what you learned today or what your takeaways were. If you're getting this on iTunes or any of the other platforms for podcast, please give us a like, please subscribe, and also give us any feedback that you may have. It helps us out a lot. We look forward to continuing to deliver this content. As always, please feel free to reach out to me directly if you'd like to see specific information or specific people on the podcast. I will gladly reach out to them and do everything I can to get them on. Again, thanks for listening to Talent Talks podcast. I am Scott Rivers. Have a great day.